Hey, what's up, everyone? Matt McGackie here on Vox&Hops Episode 5. Today, I am with my longtime friend, Paul Ablaze. I've known Paul for a very long time. I met him back in the day when I started playing shows with 3 Mile Scream in Montreal. He was growing up playing in a band called Endast, and we were both a part of the same circle. We hung out numerous times. We spent many a late night at Fofon Electric when we used to all go there with the big metal boys on Friday nights. Many a fond memory there. So come on, grab a pint, sit back, and listen to me and Paul talk about how he discovered metal music in a Christian youth group, his life with an identical twin brother, because Paul has a twin brother, his quest to enhance his vocals through different vocal mentors, and why he thinks that his band, Blackguard, is now on semi-permanent hiatus. So check it all out. Here it is, Vox&Hops, episode number 5.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, how's it going? I'm here with Paul Ablaze, longtime friend. Welcome to the Vox&Hops podcast. So what's been going on with you?
Oh, my God. The last, specifically musically, holy crap, like the last little bit has been a lot of focus on I have a newer death metal band that I've been working on the last couple of years, and I've been kind of like hopping in and out of a couple of other projects. Unfortunately, when I say hopping in and out, I wish I could have stuck around for a little bit longer, but I was with Crimson Shadows for a little bit, and unfortunately that's not really the case anymore. I thought I could kind of pull off the doing shows with them, being in Montreal and them in Toronto, but things after a little while just got like a little bit too, I want to say inconvenient, but things weren't really moving forward at any kind of like decent pace, and like this is nothing against the guys, it's just where the band is in general, all right, everybody's lives are, or the band was taking a back seat to everybody else's lives, and including myself, where like I'm busy at home doing a lot of other things, so it's hard for even me to have dedicated more time to that band. So it was kind of like, all right, well, it was just better that sort of kind of step away from it, let's say. So I know there hasn't really been like an official announcement of that necessarily, but like I still talk to Corey. Like Corey's like one of my best friends still. So like the drummer.
Shout out to Corey. Shout out to the rest of the boys.
Yeah.
Crimson Shadows. I was extremely excited when it was announced that you were going to be a part of that, because I thought you were just such a perfect fit. But as you're explaining, I see how it ended.
But that's it. Like, I absolutely adored the time that I was kind of with them, and it was just becoming too much of a pain in the ass it was mostly that because we were doing shows at really inopportune times, because we weren't, we're not touring, we weren't full-time touring, and like, it's oddly enough, it's kind of easier to go on tour sometimes, when you're saying, okay, everything else goes on pause, this is the new focus, rather than trying to try to shove something else into an already full-time schedule of life. You know what I mean?
One-off gigs are the hardest things to accomplish. It's so much work.
All we were doing was one-off gigs, so it's like, all right, if it was during the middle of the week, then like if it was on a Wednesday, I'd have to leave on a Tuesday, go try to get at least one full band rehearsal in, and then play on Wednesday, and then I'd leave on Thursday. So that's 3 days in the middle of the week that I have to take off, which is not the easiest thing when you have a full-time job.
For one gig.
For one gig, and one gig that might not even be that worth it. I mean, luckily we did play some like really great shows with them, and but yeah, it was just those kind of things were just too much of a pain in the ass, and also like how I feel like I've also changed, my let's say my musical goals in general have changed since when I first joined the band to now. Is that when I first got in there, that was kind of like more fresh off of Blackguard starting its hiatus, and I still had that will and that drive to want to go out and go do tours again. And then when tours didn't really start materializing, and then I kind of settled into like the home life, I guess, then like I sort of realized that I didn't necessarily want to full-time tour anymore either, anyway. So it's like, you know, I kind of got myself into a situation in the middle of a transition period. So like, you know, unfortunately the other end of that transition period was, you know, realizing that like, okay, well, you know, if the best case scenario for the band, you know, like new record, full-time touring, the whole nine, I don't know if I would have been able to have, like, I might have fucked off like after like a couple of months of that, man. And I definitely don't want to be that guy. You know, I don't want to leave my boys high and dry, especially when things start to pick up. So I feel like sort of stepping away when I did, you know, when there was like the least at stake was probably the best for everybody, you know. And the guys are mobilizing right now, and they're talking with new singers. And you know, I was talking with Corey about it the other day, and you know, they have some guy in the wings that like looks like might be a part of the band, and if they get this certain individual, it's going to be really freaking cool what they're going to be doing. So, awesome. So I'm very excited.
You're saying a death metal band?
Yeah. So the last couple of years, I've been working on this death metal project called Ages with Xavier Saint-Laurent. So he's the old bass player for Ion Dissonance. So he plays guitar in this. And he's one of the principal songwriters, and alongside our bass player Alex Hubert, and we also have Tommy McKinnon from like a million freaking bands in Montreal, but most notably, I suppose, from Acurian and from Neuraxis. So he's been playing drums for us for the last like year and a half, and now we have Alex Berube, who's in Terra Mobile and Unhuman and a bunch of other like crazy Montreal bands that everybody should, if everybody listening to this should know those bands because they're fucking fantastic. So he's more or less recently joined our ranks too, and it's like, you know, we've been very quiet online because we've been finishing up writing some songs, and Tommy works with the military, so like he's kind of out of town like for like very large stretches of time. So he was gone for like the majority, like pretty much the entire summer, and he's just getting back now. So he's going to start doing some drum tracks in the next couple of weeks, I believe. And so we have like five new songs that are done, and I'm like, I am so absolutely stoked on like the material and like the vibe of this band. And we only did, it kind of sucks that like things have been going sort of slow. We've like Ages has you know technically been around for a couple years now, but we've literally only done like one show, and we keep having like we keep having like member problems. Like we've already been through like 3 guitar players and like 2 or 3 drummers, and it's just like, oh my god, like whenever things start to like pick up and like we start developing like a good you know, getting a good momentum, something always happens.
Is this something that's tied more to because you're older in your lives?
That is
having a band
that almost certainly is a factor to it. I find that like these days, and I see it with other bands too, and especially like old, like, you know, with as we're all like, you know, our crew, let's say like we're getting into our late 20s and our early 30s or our mid 30s or early 40s. For some of us, it's like, okay, you know what, like, yeah, life you know, life has to take the front seat, and like the band, you know, being a musician has to you know sometimes be put aside for you know a lot of the other responsibilities that you have. So you know, like with Ages, you know, like we would have like a couple of weeks and months of like really, really great writing sessions and developing music, and then you know, we would, I don't know, take like a week off or something like that, and then it would be hard to kind of like get back into that groove, you know. Or more recently, like we did all this, we pretty much finished like the principal writing, and then Tommy took off, you know. So then it was like, okay, well, we don't have a drummer, so we spent a lot of time. We still spent time like doing a couple of rehearsals in the jam room with like basically like the drum tracks, you know, and like even like just like the programmed drums in the PA system, you know, just to kind of like keep us, you know, warmed up and make sure we're not getting cold. But at the same time, like, you know, we weren't doing it as consistently as we probably could have. You know, we like everything got a little more lax and like, all right, you know, it's like, but now that Tommy's back in town, it's like, all right, guys, let's go, let's get this EP out, because we've been sitting on some of these songs for like more unrefined versions of them. But now that like with Matt coming in and like helping with some of the songwriting, he's been adding like all these insane layers to the music. So now like, you know, what the songs used to sound like don't sound anything close to what they were before. You know, it's like appreciating how skeletal the original those demos were compared to what they are now. You know, it's like it's very night and day. and it's just some like brutally amazing stuff. Like I'm super happy about it, and it's like it's very it's a very weird mix. I mean, we've already released some older songs. We have like 3 or 4 songs that are out now on YouTube if you want to check them out. So we have like a song called Highness Nemesis with Mark Jensen from Epica and Mayan, who did some guest vocals, and we got a couple other songs. So we got a couple songs.
Find that on YouTube.
Yeah, that's
Ages
it. Find them on YouTube.
YouTube.
Ages on YouTube. So there's the couple songs out there. It's like the music itself is not. I don't find it's not straightforward death metal, and the songwriting's not. It's got like let's say you could say like a progressive element to it without being. Prog necessarily. Like, nobody would call us a prog band, but we just have like, we have odd song structures, and we're not like a super technical death metal band, which is what a lot of people, present company included, but you guys are the originators one of the originators of technical death metal. So you guys have a past, but like in the last, God knows decade or so, like I just feel like it's like band after band are just coming out trying to be like the fastest and the most technical, and how many notes can we cram into this bar, and I feel like we're sort of we have small bursts of that, but at the same time it's very very Cro-Magnum. At the same time we have a lot of breakdowns without it being too core, and the way that Alex and Xavier write, like they write using a lot of very odd chords, a lot of odd dissonant chords, so it has kind of like a black metal-y feel to it. It's got a black metal vibe to it without being black metal, and it's got technical death metal without being, we're not a technical death metal band, and it's got breakdowns, but we're not a core band. So, it's very beautifully vague description of what we're doing.
It's got a little bit of something for everyone.
It's got its flavors that works, that the all these different flavors from different genres that I find works flawlessly together, and it took us a while to kind of like get the songs to that point, but the result, I can't be, when it's actually done and finished, but the demo so far, like in the pre-production that we have done, is like I couldn't be happier with it right now. So I am ecstatic to like get in the studio and actually like go record it for real. And I mean, ideally I'd love to have it out by the end of the year, which would be fantastic, and we'll see if that happens. But yeah, we'll see what's realistic, depending on everybody's schedules. Hey, cheers.
Vox and Hops, first beer. I only brought one beer tonight. This is the Sour Citra from Les Trois Mousquetaires. It has a 3.91 out of 5 untapped rating. It's a 5.2% beer, 12 IBU, and it's from their All City. It's a generously dry hop sour ale with fruity flavors.
Okay.
Cheers.
Ooh, yeah, sour.
Yeah. It's like grapefruit juice.
Yes, that's it, actually.
But like hoppy too, because it's Citra hops, dry hopped. Les Trois Mousquetaires is from Saint Eustache originally, and it got there in 2004, and then it relocated in 2011 to Brossard. It's a brewery that I like very much, and it's one that I wanted to try, so I wanted to bring it and share it with you.
Thank you.
If you had to describe this beer as a person, who would this be? Could be a girl.
Oh,
for me,
God.
I feel a strong like female vibe on this.
Shit. The chick that plays Black Widow in the Avengers movie, what's her name? Scarlett Johansson.
There you go.
There we go.
The Scarlett Johansson. I like it. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
It's really good. There's like not much smell to it though.
I kind of missed the boat on when beer culture really started to take off a couple years ago. Like I feel like I have so many friends that like went full hog into it, and the way that you and like obviously you and the guys like Danny and my ex guitar player Louis, they could talk about beer like it's like, oh wow, like there's clearly like way more layers to understanding and appreciating beer than what I know, like I have very simple tastes, and then like, man, just like the explosion of microbreweries around Montreal, and not only around Montreal but everywhere internationally. It's
insane. It's absolutely insane. Do you remember what your first experience with beer was?
Probably when I was, I don't know, like 8 or 9 or something like that. Like I think my dad used to give me little sips of beer when I was like really young. Actually, my mom told me a really funny story. Is that like, so my dad used to give me like some like very small sips of beer when I was young, and apparently I have zero recollection of this because I was probably like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 or something like that when this happened. But apparently, like my dad had some friends over, and they were out in the back porch, and they were smoking cigars and and drinking beer. And then I think either later on that night or the day after, like I went into our garage and I found the beer bottles that were there. And apparently I picked one up and tried to like drink beer out of it, but there was like cigar ash.
That will mark you.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, that was the first time that happened, and definitely not the last.
There's nothing worse than that.
I was at the New Jersey Hardcore Metal Fest. I think there was only one of these. It was like this is like back when you could still smoke in hotel rooms, and we got like a smoking room. Oh man, it was the greatest thing. And I remember like I had two Coors King cans on my, like I was lying down in bed. I had 2 Coors King cans like on my, let's say on my lap. One was full, one was empty, and I was like, all right, that one's the ashtray, that one's the real beer. And like literally I took like my first like couple puffs of my cigarette and I ashed it right in the fresh beer.
It's a waste.
What a goddamn shame.
Well, except it was a Coors Light, so it's acceptable.
It was just
it's
a shitty Coors Light.
It's what it deserved.
Exactly. In this day and age, that'll get you 5 to 10.
Do you have any? So you're not into the craft mindset of beers, but do you have like a craft beer that you do appreciate, that you've tried, that you would go back and buy again?
Oh, I'm trying to think, man. You know what? I used to know some of the brands back when I was on tour, because like Louis, the ex-lead guitar player for Blackguard, like he was a beery. What do you call a beer guy?
A hophead, let's say.
A hophead. He was a hophead. Oh, you know what? What was it? Dogfish Ale? But does that count as a micro?
Yeah. It's big now at this point in the States,
it.
but it's still a solid one that I'll still drink. Dogfish Head.
Dogfish Head. That's it. Like that was really good. You know, and like some of the pumpkin ales around the fall, like Pumpkin was really like I love the pumpkin ales. Like those are fucking fantastic. And like I used to love when we were on tour around the fall and when they used to all come out. And there was also like there was a banana beer that I really, really liked, that I remember like from the label I could pick out if I was at like a beer store.
It was like a white beer, but it tasted and smelled like bananas.
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was a white beer, because I don't like white beers all that much.
Because there's Hefeweizens, which have like a strong like banana-y essence to it.
Scotch ales. I really like Scotch ales.
So you're all over the board. What you like?
Oh yeah, no,
you're a hophead in waiting.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I feel like if I dedicated myself to the craft, to the hop, if you will, then like I feel like I could learn a lot, and not in a short amount of time, and I could I don't know. I'm just not putting the effort into learning my shit, I guess. Like,
your BMI is thanking you.
Yeah.
For everyone that doesn't know, Paul's in very good shape.
Thank
you. Beer does not help the shape.
In the last couple months. Like in the last 3 months, I've only had casual drinks in one of those months. I didn't drink all of. I think it was May. I took completely off of drinking, which was really weird, and like I'd never really done before. And then I did it again in like June, and May. I drank in April, and I didn't drink in June, almost at all leading up into July.
It's amazing. That's pure discipline. I'd have a hard time doing that, personally.
Man. Like, I mean. You people at home listening, you can't see it, but I'm holding like a can of club soda, and like that. This has basically been saving my life. It's just carbonated water. That's it. It's like it's flavorless, but at the same time, like the bubbles are satiating enough to make you think that you're having a more lively carbonated beverage, but no, it's just water. That's it. And there's something about like it's satisfying just holding a can and drinking something carbonated. That's like, okay, that kind of fills the void of not having a beer, or better than nothing. Better than plain water. Let's put it.
It's true. It's true. I definitely go for my Perrier's or my bubbly water.
Perrier's got strong fucking game. Like when they have like the grapefruit and the orange flavored ones too, man. Those are so fucking good.
I go for like just a slice of lime at home though.
Oh yeah, right.
Tell me about your early life. You growing up as a kid. What were you like?
Very athletic. I was when I was younger, I pretty much played sports like all the time, like all through my childhood. Like it's just memories of sports and 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 sports. So like I played baseball, I played soccer, I played hockey. I guess was the sport that I most excelled at, even though I didn't really excel at it all that much. But I started playing double letter hockey at one point or another, and I stuck with that. And I was playing double letter hockey for a couple years before I just got really sick of it. And oddly enough, it was right around the time I started smoking, and then and then it just became less fun, and like coughing and wheezing on the ice all the time. And just like, fuck this noise. And I was an avid skier when I was younger too. And before before I got into before I was playing hockey more or less more competitively, I was snowboarding and skiing. So, frig man, if only I'd kind of watched my diet when I was young, I would have been like fucking ripped up through like all my younger formative years. But man, I don't know. Shitty food and beer caught up to me like real fast.
How close was that tied to you finding the music scene?
Oh, the music scene. The music scene for me started.
Did your athletic self collide with your musician self?
Yes, in a way it did. There was the connection is like, so one of my best friends is this gentleman named Kevin Glazer, and he played in a punk band in Montreal called Tainted Youth. And when I was growing, I played many years of hockey with Kevin, and he was like, when he to this day still one of my best friends. So when we were playing hockey together, and then we became buds, and we were hanging out all the time together, like he was the one that initially introduced me to punk rock and sort of like the like metal-ish. Like I'm not saying like I'm not gonna say metal, but like metal-ish bands. So like Gwar was one of the first one of the bands that Kev introduced me to. So anybody, if you listen to some of the old Gwar records, it's like it's a lot of tongue-in-cheek theatrical like punk, but at the same time like they still had some they had some faster and thrashier riffs. So that was kind of like my sort of introduction to some heavier music. And then when I was in grade was it like grade 7 and 8 or something like that, and I went to high school with the now ex guitar players of Blessed by Broken Heart. Then like they went on to do some cool shit like back in the day. But my music was basically influenced by my buddy Kevin, who was showing me all the punk stuff, and then my buddy Robbie and Simon, who were introducing me to, at first it was kind of new, like it was like the when new metal started getting really big. So it was like the first Korn records, the first couple Limp Bizkit records, even though I didn't really like Limp Bizkit never really hit it off for me, but Korn was huge. And then from there, like Robbie was very avid, like an avid music consumer. So he was always finding new bands and then telling us about it. So like, that's when I started finding out a lot about like more underground bands, like Zao and Under Oath, back in the day, and like Norma Jean when they were first starting out. A lot of it was centered into the Christian scene, because we actually we were all kind of like at one point or another, a lot of us were born again Christians. Definitely not anymore. But
I have this memory of dropping you off and your house was next to a church. Is that possible?
That's definitely, that definitely happened. My house was next to a church, but like I never went to that. Oddly enough, I never went to that church.
Okay.
No, but when I was younger, I wound up hanging out at a Christian drop-in center, and then they very slowly poisoned my mind. But they were very nice people
with
that
good
had
intentions, I'm sure.
They actually had the best intentions. It's like, and I have very little love for organized, it's quote unquote organized religion and Christianity as an organization, let's say, but I still have all the love and admiration for those the people that I had surrounded myself within that community, because they were still incredibly genuine people. They didn't espouse any kind of like any hatred towards gay people and like all the stuff you would typically hate Christians for. The community that I was a part of really didn't exhibit any of those sort of elements. So, I mean, I grew out of the Christianity, my own way over time, and especially when I started touring, and like it's like, oh my god, just sort of.
So you guys were all in a born again Christian youth club.
Yeah, that's one way. We hung out at a Christian drop-in center, and a lot of us, and there was a core of us, I suppose, that became Christian. So I was Christian and Robbie was a Christian.
What did you grow up as?
I suppose Catholic when I was really like when I was. But the thing is, like, you know, when you're really young, you know, your parent, like, I mean, my parents took us to Catholic church, but then they stopped after, you know, I don't know, like maybe when I was like 9 or 10, they stopped taking us to church. Because like also like my grandfather's turbo fucking Catholic. So I'm pretty sure he was like, you know, my dad just wanted to appease my grandfather to a certain degree and was just took us to Catholic church for the first couple of years. And then, I don't even remember the exact age, but we stopped going. And then years after, you know, when I was in my my early teens was when I started hanging out at the Christian Drop-In Center. Just because, you know, I think we had a bud that, you know, we had a friend that we went to high school with that who was part of like a very like hardcore Christian family, and he introduced us to this drop-in center. It was called the Vault, and he's just like, yo, come hang out with us, come hang out at the Vault. And it was a great place to hang out. You know, it's like, it's not like nobody was, you know, Bible bashing you while you were there. But if you ever wanted to talk about religion, they'd like the staff would be very open to it. And then the closer we got to all the people and it became more of a family, then, you know, I kind of fell into it. You know, I felt the loving touch of God, and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. So it was nice. It was good. It was an interesting point in time period in my life. But there were a lot of really, really great Christian bands, which was awesome. So bands like Extol and Zao and Living Sacrifice and, you know, Aslay Dying back in the day, and the bands that predated Aslay Dying from some of those members like Evelyn. And
so these are all the early bands that shaped your musical career.
Yeah.
Christian metal bands.
A lot of
and hardcore bands.
And a lot of hardcore bands too. Bands like very not Christian band like Throwdown. So that was like one of the first hardcore shows I ever went to was Throwdown at the Lex back in the day, and that was like one of the most insane things I'd ever seen in my entire life. It was like you went to of course you went to the Lex. We played the Lex together many times, or no, we played it there at least once together. But I think at
least twice, probably, yeah,
because we did that God Forbid show
and the Big Metal
Metal Fest, yeah,
too. I want to say,
yeah, that's right.
It's a special room for everyone that remembers the Lex. I'm sure a lot of touring bands remember the Lex.
A lot of fucking. You know what, man? I wish they would do like. Feel like there should be a documentary done about the Lex.
It would be cool. I'd watch it. That's for sure.
There's probably like a ton. I hope there's a ton of like video that's like floating, like maybe not floating around the internet, but like maybe somebody's fucking basement in like
some VHS. Yeah.
I had handicap tape from a bunch of shows. Because I remember when I first started going to shows, I brought a camera around a lot to them because like my mom had a camera and I was just like, yeah, fuck it, you know, like, so I started videotaping a lot of shows. Like I videotaped like the old Tantrum shows and Violent Marv, like way back in the day, like the shows that they did at like Rainbow Room and shit like that. I videotaped a couple shows at Lex, and one of them was that Throwdown show, and that was insane. It was like the place was like practically sold out. And
this is the first show you went to?
This was one of the first hardcore shows. This is probably like the first hardcore show I ever went to. Was that?
And when you're there, were you like, oh my god, I'm scared?
Yeah, no, definitely to a certain degree, but it was just because like that was a different culture altogether. You know, it's like that is like the hardcore scene is not the metal scene. You know. So the first time seeing hardcore dancing was something that was just fucking crazy, you know. And you know what? And I'm probably looking at the past through rose-colored glasses, but I feel like hardcore, like I obviously a lot of people like to give it shit because it looks, you know, if you look up random videos of it, it looks fucking ridiculous. But god damn it, man, when you were like 15, 16 and you're watching hardcore, like, you know, and in a tight pit and you see people like going off like that. It's a fucking war zone, and you
gotta watch out for your life.
You gotta watch out for yourself. And I feel like people did it in a more like people were just better at hardcore dancing back in the day. I don't know, like they made it look better somehow, and I cringe when I see some kids dancing these days, but. Or I think it's when you go to like the metal core shows where you see like a lot of like it just looks worse. And then if you go to like an actual underground, like if you go to like a hardcore show, like if you were to go to like This Is Hardcore Fest or something like that, or Tsunami Fest, or like some of the real hardcore like shows, then like I don't know, it has a different energy to it, I feel,
versus a metal show.
Yeah, well, even versus like a real I use that term loosely, but like a hardcore show versus a metalcore show, where you see like technically these kids are doing the exact same thing, but there's a very different energy about it, I find.
When did the transition come? Because when I met you, you were like hardcore Paul.
Yeah, but I feel like I was, but I wasn't at the same time, because I feel like here's the thing. I feel like when you met me, like I definitely had like the stretched ears back then. I think that's like fucking James's naming me a hardcore Paul.
Maybe that might be why. Shout out to Big James if you're listening.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know if that was done in a pejorative manner, but at the time it was just like, it's like, okay, yeah, I definitely looked more hardcore than everybody else, but at the same time, like I was listening to like, I was listening to like Halloween and Hammerfall and like power metal, and I was listening to Origin, and like, so like I, not unlike my taste in beer, my taste in music and everything was just like literally all over the place. I feel like the during those first couple of years, probably then we were meeting, the first times we met, I was definitely going to more hardcore shows because I had more friends that were going to hardcore shows at the time, and then when I started getting into like, and then there was our community of like the English metal bands, our English metal band and the big metal community, quote unquote. That's when it was like, oh, okay, now I started to dip more into metal shows because I had people to go with, like, so it was another social circle and more shows to go to. So like there was like years where like I was going to like 3 shows a week, like I was going to like the punk, like a punk show one night, a hardcore show another night, and a metal show another night, and I was kind of bouncing back and forth. And I would also like, I remember I would purposely wear like metal shirts to a hardcore show and hardcore shirts to a metal show, like, and maybe that was just my own like stuck up way to like stick out and not look like literally like everybody else necessarily, but I definitely did do that to a certain degree, and it was meditated, it was very premeditated.
So maybe that's why I was associated you as the hardcore kid, because you were wearing hardcore shirts at the metal shows. And
I was the kid with and back then, if you had the stretched ears, you were a hardcore kid, and like I was one of the only guys in our community back then that did have the stretched ears.
That's true. Tell me about growing up with a twin. For everyone that doesn't know out there,
I have a twin.
Paul has a twin.
I have a twin brother.
Identical twin brother.
Yeah, we've been constantly battling to see who's going to be the more popular twin. No, the more famous twin. Dave, because me and Dave both got into like music around the same time, and I think like, yeah, I got into a band first, and then Dave joined another band called Dave joined a band called Psychotic 4 maybe a couple of years later or something like that, and then his band took off. Like his band was huge in Montreal and Quebec area for a long time because they had a significant local there was a local label that was pushing them and giving they got like a lot of like, they had like through the label they got like crazy government grants for like music videos and to do shows and shit like that, so they were getting out there, and they had a music video on Music Plus, which is like the Much Music / MTV of Quebec. They had like heavy rotation at one point for the music video, so it was really funny growing up. And like when Dave's band was at the height of its popularity, I was constantly being mistaken for him. And then years later, when Blackguard started taking off, everybody was mistaking Dave for me. So there was always that battle to see, like, all right.
What about like growing up before that? Did you like find a way to distinguish yourself from him, or was that important to you?
No, not really. I mean,
you guys never played in a band together.
Dave did play bass for Blackguard on our the last North American tour that we did in the end of 2013. Dave played bass with us, and that was great. I
knew that. I had forgotten. That's true. That
was just very, very proud moments in there. Like, it's like, but when that was like it was kind of funny how like we were in projects, and then we were in our separate projects, and we never played in a band together, and it was just like, why don't we ever make a band together? And like, I don't know, like, I mean, Dave's band Psychotic 4 was more cock rock, and like it's not what I wanted to do, and I wanted to do more like death metal and melodic death metal and basically anything like heavier. I mean, Dave does appreciate that kind of stuff. That's not necessarily the kind of music that he listens to, as often as I do. So it's like Dave doesn't want to be in a death metal band, so it's kind of like, okay, well, where do you meet in the middle, and like maybe sometime in the future, like we'll be able to kind of like see where we sort of meet like stylistically, and maybe we can come up with something. Or like, I mean, I've been the the last couple months I've been playing like a shitload more guitar, and like specifically like acoustic guitar. So like, and I have ideas for like a potential new project that's gonna, you know, it's gonna look more like a quote unquote solo project, let's say, where I'm gonna be doing most of the, like, I'll be doing like the most of the writing, but I'm gonna be working with, I've already spoken to some people about like helping me contribute, because like, listen, I'm just a stupid singer. I don't know I'm learning how to write songs at this point, so I need other people's help. And I mean, I brought it up to Dave, and I was just like, listen, you know, definitely I would love to have him like step in and do like contribute something, you know, some guitar parts. And it's definitely going to be nice once I start getting full into like writing mode for this project that, I mean, Dave's one room away. I can just be like, yo, dude, what do you think of this? And, you know, like, you know, see if anything that I write, you know, inspires something in him to write something. So who knows, you know, like, for all I know, this might be the project that like, oh yeah, okay, this is like, maybe it'll turn into our band, you know. So
when like Psychotic 4 was at the height of its popularity, were you proud, jealous?
It was so much fun because all their band, like I was good friends, like, you know, I was Dave's brother, you know. It's like and also like one of their other guitar players, Pat, he was an old time friend of ours. That's how Dave got into the band. So it's like I knew and like hung out with those guys all the fucking time. It was like, and this was like when we were in our late teens, early 20s. So like we were fucking raging all the time, you know, like this is the height of you know, like the teen alcoholism, you know. It's just like every weekend going out till 3, 4, 5 in the morning or whatever, and like, you know, like drinking every weekend, drugs, whatever, like that kind of thing. So like it was fucking great, you know. Like I wasn't jealous. I was happy because I was getting invited to the parties too. So whenever shit was going down, like, and I loved that, like the community that the music community that Psychotic 4 was a part of was amazing. And I loved being a part of that community. And then when Blackguard started kind of doing its thing and taking off, and, you know, when we got signed and started to do tours, it was great, like introducing Dave to, like, you know, all these like the touring bands that you know, that we would eventually go out with. And, you know, whenever, you know, the couple times that we did heavy MTL, like, you know, it was awesome being able to be like, hey Dave, like, here's a all access bracelet, let's fucking rage, you know, let's rage for the weekends, you know. So
you're like paying it back, you know, paying him forward.
Yeah, that's it.
Why him guitar? Why you vocals? How did that work out?
I have no fucking idea. No, I do have an idea. I don't know why, but I know how it happened necessarily. So like I first started off, I remember my cousin Jeff, he used to be a guitar player, and even though I never actually saw him play guitar, he had an old guitar that I asked him for. Like, I asked him if I could have it, and he gave it to me, or like gave it to me on like permanent loan or whatever. I got it stringed up, fixed up, and by me I mean my mom did, paid for it, and then I literally did nothing with it, and then like I literally didn't play it, and then Dave somehow fucking picked it up and started playing guitar. Like I remember being in elementary school and trying to learn acoustic guitar, and just not, like, nothing was sinking in, you know. Like I was able to learn more acoustic guitar in one day as an adult, you know, of just like, oh, okay, so this is, you know, these are what this is called, this is fine. Then sitting down and doing like weeks and months of like guitar lessons. Like I remember, like, I think I would sit down for a lesson and immediately forget everything, and then never ever practice, you know. Like my mind, music was the furthest thing from my mind when I was younger, and, you know, like that only kind of took hold and shape later on in life when music was a passion. You know, but you started taking guitar lessons because your parents wanted you to?
No,
not even. I think I think when I was younger, you know, like we're talking elementary school younger, I think my parents just like they would be like, hey, you want to learn piano? It's like, oh, sure, I guess. Like, okay, cool. We'll like, it's like, we'll get you some piano lessons. It's like, and then, you know, basically like whatever my fancy was, you know, just like, you know, which sounds spoiled, which it kind of is. You know, like I was able to try some things out, you know, and my parents were gracious enough to pay for lessons for as long as I, you know, it held my interest, which wasn't long, so sometimes it was just a couple of weeks or a month or something like that, and then it was just like, nope, it's like they wouldn't buy, like I never bought, like they didn't buy me a guitar,
baby grand,
or a baby grand. Actually, my parents had a baby grand before me, and had nothing to do with
wow.
me. So yeah, so then I started playing drums when I was younger, and then that was one of the first instruments that I actually like really tried to put a lot more effort in. And then, but my sister was playing drums, and then I started playing drums. And then when I was in elementary school or in high school with Robbie and some of the guys, the guys that would eventually make Blessed by Broken Heart, they were playing. They started playing guitar. And then that was the point where we were like, it's like, oh, let's make a band or something like that. So then I think I started picking up bass. So I started taking bass lessons, and I got okay at that. So like I basically just like I instrument hopped like crazy. And then the hop to being a vocalist happened the very first rehearsal with fucking In Dust, was my first real band with Chris Arsenian. And so my punk bud Kevin Glazer, who I was talking about before, he was going to high school with Chris Arsenian, and Kev one day was like, yo, like, Paul, you like metal, like my buddy Chris likes metal and he wants to make a band, like, like give him a call. So he gave me his phone number, and I called him up, and I was like, hey, like, I'm Paul, like I kind of play bass, like let's do this. So I went over, and Chris taught me like the little, like the beginning riffs or whatever of like the very first song, and I was playing him on bass. And then I also we had a microphone set up too, so I was kind of like trying to like scream. I was just like, oh, I'll practice screaming out lyrics or something like that. So I started screaming some shit, and it sounded okay. And then I think Chris was like, he's like, listen, like you got a good scream. Like, do you want to play bass and scream, or do you just want to scream? I'm like, fuck it, I'll just scream, and then that was it.
Unbelievable.
Just like that, and I became the singer.
You never had the passion to be a singer?
No, not necessarily.
That's
just kind
crazy.
of like, I kind of just fell into it, and then I wound up sticking.
It's like 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah,
now.
there you go. Shoot.
You were just amazingly good right from the start, is something that you grew into.
Oh, I mean, I'd like to think that I was okay. I mean, fuck, man, I haven't seen any of like the footage of like my first show, so for all I know, I sounded like shit.
I seem to remember a Chihuahua.
Yeah, probably.
Your early.
I think
technique.
I was trying like I definitely had less control than I I eventually developed a lot more control in my time, like after doing a lot more shows and being in different bands and whatnot, but. I mean, I felt like I had a certain amount of aptitude to it, or else I feel like people would have stopped me and would have been like, all right, you need to
just be quiet.
Yeah, just stop doing that.
Go back and play bass.
Exactly. So, I mean, I feel like I was decent at it. And then, I mean, fuck, man, it got me my gig with Blackguard like a couple years later. So it's like, all right, well, listen, I couldn't have been that bad.
Can you explain your vocal technique to me?
Oh my God, no.
No,
not at all.
You just hold the mic
And just started screaming. That's it. Because so the funny thing about that is like I feel like maybe I was doing it all wrong for like all the like so many years. Like so I did. You know what? So funny thing. I did a vocal lesson with Sebastien Croteau from Necrotic Mutation. And he has a very different vocal style than I do, and it was very interesting sitting down with him and very painstakingly sort of dissecting your vocal cords and how you produce sound, because that's not a conversation I've necessarily had before with another screamer. And then realizing that just like, oh, what I'm doing is not what he's doing, and like every, like there are certainly different styles to doing this, and I was doing it one way, but that one way worked for me for many, many, many years. I did wind up blowing my voice out on tour one time, and like that kind of set a bad precedent after that, where just like I whether it was because of smoking or I don't know, any number of other things I might have been doing to my voice, but like I blew it out like at the beginning of a tour, and I basically had to go through like a full tour with like a shit scream.
There's nothing worse than that.
Yeah, like I did it right. I should have. Well, there's a couple things I should have done. It was right before. It was at the beginning of it was like a 2-month tour too with fucking Nevermore, their last North American tour, and I blew it out right at the beginning, and I should have just been like, I'm not going to sing for a couple of days, you know, like you guys do it instrumental. I don't give a shit. Like I should have just been like, put my foot down and been like, no. Or, you know, like, all right, no smoking, you know, like I like all the things that like, you know, you can Google and it'll tell you in 5 seconds, like all the things you can't do. I'm pretty sure I did all the wrong things, like right off the bat. But I wound up going through like an entire tour with like a very compromised vocal cords. And I should have went to a doctor as soon as I got back. And of course I didn't. But, you know, it sort of came back. But after that, like I definitely felt that I definitely like would kind of like lose my scream a little easier than you know any time prior to initially blowing it out.
Even to this day,
I've been very painstakingly trying to like rebuilding my voice. Actually, I find that my low screams now are more powerful than they've ever been, and that was from trying to implement some of the techniques that Sebastian kind of showed me.
Yeah, shout out to Sebastian Croteau.
Shout out to Sebastian Croteau.
Yeah,
man.
You're an absolute man, an absolute beast, a vocal beast.
Yeah, in terms of like not squeezing so much with like when it comes to doing lows, like we're talking specifically about lows. Yeah, not squeezing so much of the vocal cords and having them more out and having it come more from
your diaphragm,
your gut, which is something that like every like you know like singers. I feel like a lot of singers say like, oh, you got to scream from here, but they don't actually know what that means necessarily, because or it can be very confusing to somebody that let's say isn't as that can't have that can't wrap their head around the concept necessarily, because on its surface, even if you're doing it wrong, quote unquote wrong, you know, like if you're using more, let's say you're quote unquote using your throat more, I mean, you're still pushing from your stomach, you know, which, you know, in your diaphragm, you're still pushing from this area, and you're still using your vocal cords to manipulate the sound, to create the noise, create the sound that you want.
So you're still getting a result.
You're still getting a result, and it's not a bad result. So to have somebody go like, no, scream from your diaphragm. It's like, motherfucker, what do you think I'm doing? You know, and like, so it's like having somebody describe exactly what you're doing, but say that what you're doing is wrong is very confusing
and frustrating. But it's not like a guitarist where you can say, no, place your fingers like this. No, pick like this, hold it like that. It's all inside, and it's all really like muscle memory and visualizations that really help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, and it took time and doing like certain exercises to be able to kind of like to piece everything together and to become more intimately familiar with the different parts of your vocal cords and be able to recognize what's happening. And I've also, like, last year I did I was taking like singing lessons, like, you know, clean singing lessons. So with that, I was able, like, with the help of her name was Simone, she was able to help me identify different, like, you know, doing certain let's say some exercises and some vocal movements that I could start identifying different parts of my vocal cords and my folds and what they're doing and what doing certain things affects them, you know, or how to have more, let's say, like, just more vocal cord control. Well, so Seb's a huge proponent of the like the Tibetan monk singing,
Gregorian.
So the Gregorian singing. So, and that's something that I've been able to do for years, but I've never, like, put a lot of time into. Like, it's just one of those things that, like, you know, I would kind of fool around with every once in a while. But now I'm avidly doing it way more often, and I kind of use it as a bit of a warm up too.
Mm-hmm. So give us one. That sounds awesome, and it's not that far from a scream.
And it's not that far.
It really, I can see where he's coming from.
The coolest thing was when I was sat down with Seb and doing the lesson, like, I came with my own questions too, and I kind of had like these, and I was like trying to piece these theories that I had in my head and the connection between the Gregorian singing and screaming and certain exercise that we could do, and I I told Seb that like I was fooling around with like sometimes if I'm in the jam room alone, I'll try to like go from the Gregorian scream, like the throat singing, and try to very slowly manipulate your vocal cords into a scream. And he was like, yes, like, yeah, do that. Like, that's perfect. You know, so you're just kind of like smoothing out the transition between the Gregorian, like the throat singing into the more guttural, because when you're, and like also when you're, to the harsh, and like when you're doing the Gregorian screaming, your throat is more open and you're not using, it's not tension. There's no tension.
It's very relaxed.
It's extremely relaxed when you're doing that. So if you can slowly bridge the throat singing to the scream, that is that's a better way to get your guttural scream out, because you know you're not you're not like there's, like we said, like there's not all that tension in your vocal cords. You're not using tension to create the sound. It's now coming from, you know, granted, it's like you're using a slightly different part of the vocal, like the vocal folds, to be able to create that guttural sound. So, like, I remember, like, just like I remember, like years ago, if somebody were to be like, "Hey, Paul, like, give us a guttural scream," and be like, "Oh, no, I don't want to do that." And now, like, I could be walking down the street and somebody could be like, "Paul, give me a guttural." Don't ask me to do it now, but like somebody would be like, "Hey, could you give me a guttural?" And I feel like I could do it a lot better. I could kind of do it on command
with more confidence.
With more confidence now, you know.
It's because when you like tighten up your throat and all that, there's less air that can get out.
That too, yeah.
Which, you know, air is the most important thing when it comes to death metal screaming.
But I made it work for years, you know, and I can hear it too in other singers. I can hear what they're doing, you know. So it's like there's certain singers I'm like, oh, I know you're doing more this or you're doing more that, you know, and you can hear it in the tone and the timbre of their gutturals or their screams, like what you're using, like a black metal high is way more constricting in the vocal cords, you know, and which is something that I like, and like I would use a lot of highs, and I would use more of that, more of a constricted vocal folds to get those kind of highs. And actually, to do it, I feel like to get really high and like to get the black metal tone, let's say, like, you won't get the same tone from having a very open vocal fold. Like, you won't be able to get as high, you know.
No,
like,
and it has to be almost like a fry scream.
Exactly. Like, so I feel like Corpse Grinder's highs are obviously not they're not Ishan's highs. I feel like those two are very different, you know, like they're using they're using their vocal cords in a different manner to create the same sound.
I definitely feel Corpse Grinder would be more open.
He's more open. He's got a very open style for sure. And I mean, I don't know, like maybe somebody's listening to this who knows Ishan can be like, yo, Paul, is this guy full of shit or what? But
what about Simone's like warm up things you were saying, exercises?
So so one of the things that she had taught me when I was singing, you know, doing usually clean singing, not unlike what we were just talking about, is again keeping the vocal folds open and loose, you know, making sure you don't have so much tension. So one thing that she did, I developed. She taught me this way to be able to try to to focus and be able to control the vocal cords in order to keep them open. So, let's say you take like a yawn, and you can kind of feel your vocal cords opening up. So now take that yawn. Close your mouth, but you can feel the vocal, like when you take the yawn and you feel the vocal cords open. When you close your mouth again, try to keep engaging those vocal cords to keep them open. You know,
keep that
space there, and then eventually, you can just sitting here, I can kind of open and close them a little bit. You know, I kind of developed that musculature. You know, and it's
that muscle memory.
Yeah. So you can over time, once you realize what is this part? You know, it's because it's such a weird muscle grouping, because it's not like a finger. Wave your index finger. Here it is. So trying to be able to consciously manipulate your vocal cords is such a different thing, and you know you need to learn like yawning. It's just like, okay, like, when you yawn, your vocal cords are going to open up. Now, just be conscious of it, feel it, and now try to isolate it, and now attempt to control it, be an attempt to try to open it up and close it and whatnot, and develop that kind of control. So when it comes to singing, she'd be like, Paul, remember to have, let's just say it's called retraction. Like, make sure, retract your vocal cords. It's like, okay, cool. And after a little while, you're able to develop that muscle memory and that just the ability to control your vocal cords. And it's something that, like, unless somebody showed you that, and again, not unlike going through some exercises with Sebastien and realizing that, like, oh no, I can still make these noises, but you just have to start tweaking certain physiological things to be able to do it better.
And easier.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it becomes so much easier.
Yeah. The one thing, though, about the more open is that because more air is escaping, I can't run around quite as much. Or I got to be a little more conscious of taking my breaths.
And you can't, like, hold stuff as long.
And you can't hold stuff as long. That's another thing.
As long. Either the highs or the lows.
That's it. So I feel like if you warm up properly, like warming up properly, cooling down properly, and exploring your voice as best you can. Like if you're a screamer, explore what your vocal cords can do for you. Like take some time, try to find some resources, whether it's Melissa Cross or actually, go hit up Sebastien Coteau on Facebook, because he's fucking great. And that guy needs to come out with a DVD like super fast, because I feel like would take the fuck off,
or like a YouTube subscription,
or YouTube videos or something like that. And because I actually liked sitting down and talking with them better than reading the Zen of Screaming, because I felt like as cool as it was, I didn't think it was. I felt like the explanations were a little shallow in terms of like I watched the whole DVD and I'm like, at the whole time I was like, she doesn't really explain well how you scream, like how you create those noises. Like she goes through a lot of vocal exercises, and I'm sure a one-on-one is a completely different thing, and I would love to sit down with her one day if ever I had like $400 and like an hour in New York, or however much it is. Maybe it's like $200, but like, I'd love to sit down with her and go and do a vocal lesson with her. That I feel like I would definitely get something out of it. But the DVD for me was had something to be desired, but there was a lot of great singing exercises. There's a lot of great singing exercises that, like, you'll get something out of it for sure.
I use it religiously.
You do?
That warm up every time before I scream.
And you're one of the best.
Thank you. But
I think you're one of the best.
I want to take a lesson from Coteau, and if I would love to take a lesson from Melissa, but I've been using her religiously since back in the day.
I have her warm-ups on the computer, and I got to put it on my phone so I can actually go through it.
I feel like as I've gotten older, I need to switch down to like a baritone, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes at the end of a tour, it's a bit hard to get to the top. What is some of the best piece of advice which you would like to give someone that's starting out in his or her own band?
Okay. The first bit is something that a mutual friend of ours told me, a man named Mike Marino.
Shout out to Mike.
Shout out to Mike Marino over at Ibanez and 3 Mile Scream.
That's right.
The Catalyst. Yeah. So Mike, Mike has been he's been like I feel like he's like the godfather within our community in terms of like, Mike's a very wise guy because his uncle is Frank Marino from Mahogany Rush, and he learned a lot of music business tips, and wisdom. A lot of wisdom was imparted onto him in a very young age, and he had a lot of experience dealing with industry people far younger or at a far younger age than a lot of us did. So like he imparted a lot of that wisdom onto us. And one of the coolest things, and one of the things that he told me that stuck with me the most was, first of all, like the hard part is not getting signed, it's staying signed.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that bit of advice. I've heard that before.
Yeah. And something that I'm not going to say I coined because nobody knows I said this. I've said this to a couple of people before, but when it comes to the music industry, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It never does. It never will. So if you think having the best label with the best manager and the best booking agent is necessarily going to make you a star, you are fucking wrong. Okay. It's, there's so many more elements, and I want to say to a degree luck, and obviously the better you are, the luckier you're going to get. There's so much that goes into being quote unquote successful in the music industry that don't make being signed and doing the tours how you would define success. Really learn how to be happy. I have a buddy who's is an incredibly talented guitar player who kind of gave up being in bands somewhat recently, just because he was like, it's he said it's I'm never going to get famous. It's the industry's so fucked. It's why do I want to play? Why do I want to play guitars and play in bands? If that's your reason, if your reasoning is just to get famous, then you're kind of doing it for the wrong reasons. I hope you do it because the music, is this is a part of you that you want to get out, it fulfills your need as a human being to create, so I would hope that anybody getting into music in general, do it for the right reasons, and if you wind up seeing any kind of financial success, or maybe not financial success, because Blackguard was definitely never financially successful, but we did we did get signed and we did do amazing tours, and I met I got to tour with my heroes. I'm on a first name basis with some of the people that I grew up listening to, which is fucking mind blowing to me. And I've made some of the best friends through an industry that did its best to kill me.
But if you gauged all your success on finances,
but I could, yeah,
it would be a failure.
And
but you don't see it as one because
I can't. That's it. I can't see it as a failure. It's I still got to do more in my. We were touring for 6 years or something like that. And we were a band, a good 8 years before that, or a decade before that. So it was a long road, and when it picked up, and granted, it wasn't fruitful in regard to us having a prolonged quote unquote professional career, but that's fine. I appreciate everything it gave me, and I try not to resent it for what it took away.
That's very mature of you to look at it that way.
And I don't want, that's it. I don't want to resent it for what it took away, because you need to look at it. If I were to resent the music industry for, I don't know, my lack of formal education, it's I could say oh my God, all those years I could have went to college and I'd be in a better job situation, or this, that, or the other thing. It's that would just eat you up, and it would eat me up. So it's there's no point in thinking of it in those terms, because it gave me memories and friends that I would never trade for a million years. And I even think when I because Blackguard was kind of known as a band that toured way too much, which is very accurate, and we did.
You guys were road dogs.
We were road dogs. We were very lucky to have a booking agent and a manager who didn't give a fuck about us as a band and just wanted to make money off of us. And we were the band that never said, when we didn't say no when the opportunities came our way, because they were always cool opportunities with cool bands. So it was kind of why say no to this Nevermore tour? It's oh my God, and that was hands down one of the worst tours and financially ever. But Jesus Christ, man, we made friends. The friendships that we made on that tour last to this day. And
they're an iconic band,
And they were an icon. Yeah, they were. Were and still are an iconic band. And World Dane, rest in peace, man. It was great seeing him the few times I got to see him after we toured with them, and he came out to a couple shows in Seattle when we were there, and I love that guy to death, and I got to talk to him talk to him from time to time online, even Jeff Loomis and all these dudes that have some of those guys are lifers, man, still going on, still doing their music thing, and the memories and the friendships from that awful awful tour that on paper we never should have done, you know, retrospective. Like when you look at it from a retrospectively, it's just like, well, you know what? It's fine.
You still got some successes out of it because you're looking at it maturely.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's like I wouldn't trade those memories. I don't want. That's it. I don't want to trade those memories for anything.
What is your one misstep that you've taken in your musical career? Okay, that you wish you could take back.
Oh, dude, I wish. I wish I could. I wish we had said no. Okay, so I don't know if this necessarily directly contradicts everything that I just said about not I don't regret it because it already happened, but if I could, you know, if I could take Maurizio from Cataclysm's advice, who was our first manager, was like he was very big about taking it easy on the touring and like not burning out your audience. So that was one piece of advice that I really, really, really wish that we took more to heart and we implemented a lot more. Because I mean, at the time, every decision you make when it comes to being in a band, you do it, you know, with the best. Everything happens. You do everything with the best intentions, you know. So we toured as much as we did, thinking that, okay, like every tour that we were doing was going to be kind of like a different audience. So we just kept thinking we were getting in front of new people and new faces, and we kept saying like, okay, well, we'll do this, you know, we'll tour our fucking asses off, and then we'll stop, you know, we'll take a break, you know, pull out a new record, and then we'll start doing more more conservative touring schedule. You know, but then unfortunately, sort of like by the time like we had tried to start implementing that, it was almost too late. You know, like our own fan base that we had started to accumulate already started getting was already bored of us because they'd seen us like 6 times in like 2 years, and so like, you know, like next thing you know, like you're going on tour and you're not selling any merch because everybody already has it. Nobody gives a shit anymore. So it's just like, and you're touring the same music. You know, we didn't get the records. We didn't get a new record out as fast as we should have. You know, like all this, that, and the other things. So it was just like basically like, yeah, like touring. Fuck, man, I really wish we had done like a third of the tours, or like maybe or half or a third of the tours that we had done. You know.
So it's like the burning out of the name, and was it like a burnout for the members as well? The
members, the crowd, like everybody, like right across the board. I mean, for me too, it's like, you know what, when we did our when Blackguard did our tour with Fintrell, the last one, I felt that when we did it, it was like, this is a chore. We don't want to be here right now. You know, we did it because it was like a Fintrell tour and we were all kind of like super stoked to do it. You know, Fintrell, like us and Fintrell kind of have Fintrell have a very, are sort of like a symbolically significant band to us, just because like they were like we opened for them at Medley, you know, prior to being signed, you know, like we were like the local band, and that kind of like helped launch us in Montreal and Quebec. So, and you know, we've become buds with them, you know, and so it's kind of like, all right, like if we finally get to tour with Fintrell, and I kind of thought it was fitting going into that tour. I'm like, if this is the last tour, it'll be so funny that it sort of ends where it began.
Did you feel you knew it was going to be the last tour?
Yeah,
it was like said in the band, or was just
well. With that being said, I don't know, wink, wink, if it's going to be like the last. You know, I don't know if it's going to be the last, but.
Before the hiatus,
I felt that like this very well could be. I mean, for all I know, it could be like the last like tour, you know, the last shows. No, we did do shows after that. We did 2. We did 2 Ontario shows like a year later, and then we really didn't do fuck all. But yeah, I kind of felt that like that was it. You know, like I could see it in everybody's eyes, and like how everybody just everybody's demeanor, and you know, we did it, and I felt like a lot of us just wanted to be home, you know, like, I mean, that year that was like a slow year for us touring wise. I think we did like a Soilwork tour, and then we did that one. So we'd actually like spent a lot of time at home, and we were kind of, in the back of my head, and I might have voiced it too to the rest of the band, but I was kind of like, I felt that if that tour was a success, then I could, you know, it would have renewed everybody's spirits, and it really wasn't. Like, we were really seeing the fallout from, you know, the years of over touring, you know, and just that like we hadn't amassed like the fan base that we wanted to, and we thought that like, oh, the Finchel, we went into that tour going like, this is on paper like the most perfect tour we could do aside from like a Children of Bodom, you know. If this doesn't work, what the fuck are we doing, you know, kind of thing. You know, and granted, that tour could have worked had we maybe not done, you know, a ton of other tours prior to that. Like if we went into that tour with like a new record and we hadn't done a tour in like 8 or 9 months, you know, and we hadn't done, you know, like 5 tours, randomly wiped them off of our history, like, and not burnt out our audience, like that could have been a very, very, very different tour. But as it stood, you know, everything we had done the last couple of years, not being on, we were supposed to have a new record on that fucking tour too, which didn't end up happening. And then like, yeah, we did it, and we were direct support, and Metzetol from Estonia was, they were on the tour too. They got browbeat to being the opener for the tour, and we were the direct support, but they were wiping the floor with us every fucking night. Like, no, like people did not give a shit about us.
Performance wise, like in the crowd or just merchandise?
Yeah, you know, well, everything across the board. I mean, Metzetol too had never been to North America, so they were fresh. You know, like people were fucking stoked for them, and like they were like, in terms of folk metal, they're a very unique band too, and like they put on a great live show. So, you know, yeah, man, people were like eating their shit up. You know, like they were a great band. People were loving the show, buying their merch. People weren't buying our merch, didn't care about us. And it was, you know, it just left like this super sour taste in everybody's mouth. Just kind of like, what the fuck are we doing?
Did you guys as a band like feel trapped by the booking agent you mentioned?
Yeah, but we definitely, by the end of, by that last year, we had definitely grown balls and started saying no. Actually, funny enough, like we were announced, we were confirmed and announced on a tour that we never said yes to.
Okay, that's sketchy. Yeah.
You know, like while there was like a quote unquote negotiation for the tour going on, I kept saying like, it's like, hey, listen, give it, like, and I said like, it's like, hey, well, you know, the agent's like, yo, we got this tour, and I'm like, well, you give me the numbers, you know, like how much we're getting paid, you know, like give me some numbers, and then we'll talk about it. And then every time the conversation would come up, it was always getting like, the numbers were always getting skirted around, like, you know, like there's never any figures that were being talked about in terms of like, because like I didn't want to go out for like $200, you know, like, and I wasn't, you know, at that point I was already fed up of fucking touring. That was just like, you know, fuck this shit. Like,
I'm not 6 people in the band too.
5. We were 5. You know, but also at that point, I think we were trying to hire a driver just to make it easy on everybody, because it was, you know, that was tough too. Is doing like some of the guys doing all the driving too, because there was only a couple people that had driver's license. So like, yeah, we got like, there was like we were confirmed on a tour, and I had to like, you know, and people were tagging me and shit, and I had to go like, no, we are not on this tour. Like, this is not happening. And I gave my booking agent shit for it. I was just like, what the fuck, dude? Like, we had never said yes to this. Like, you never gave me the numbers. So it's like, no, we're not doing that. Like, we're not going out. We're not doing that tour. And that was it, you know? And like, I wish we had done that. I wish we had said that like 3 years prior.
3 tours earlier. Yeah. I have a pitch for you. If I had a lot of money, I'd make it happen. We can, you know, think of some ideas to make this a reality. I think that you are a very gifted speaker, and I've mentioned it to you before. You should have your own podcast. And in my mind, it should be this. Okay. A band shows up at a venue. They like to work out. Normally they have like their TM find them a local gym somewhere that's 24 hours that they can get to and do their workout either before or after their set. My mindset is this. You somehow show up there with a trailer with a full gym in it, and you know, the person works out, and you do like a video podcast alongside them. You train beside them, and you like interview them at the same time.
I feel like that could totally work out too.
It could totally work out, because everybody was trying to stay healthier.
No pun intended.
The more you know, like everyone wants to get to the gym. Everybody's annoying in certain cities, you know, and it's just up to like to get an extra like 2-3 parking spots. The promoter could like work it out here. I think it could work.
Man, that's not a bad idea at all. Shoot. Okay, so like funny story. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I went down to Ottawa to go see OTEP play. And so like Blackguard did a tour with OTEP I think it was almost like 8 years ago or something like that. It was like it was like 2010 or 2011 or something like that. But that was like the year that I really like got super serious into exercising. And like, granted, like I had already been working out and whatnot prior to that, but their guitar player Ari, who at the time had like just joined the band like fairly recently, he was like a legitimate bodybuilder, like, and so like he brought like a ton of weight. He brought a ton of weights with him on tour, like all these kettlebells and stuff like that. So me and him, like, and he's also one of the nicest guys on the fucking planet. Like, he's one of the greatest dudes you're ever going to want to meet on the road. And me and him started like training like every fucking day together. So when I went to go see him in Ottawa, sure shit, he had like he had a bench with a full like Olympic bar with like 500 pounds worth of weights on him. Oh man, and we were just like, we were like, the bus was parked like in this like mall parking lot, and we were just like in a corner like deadlifting next to the bus.
See, this is why I think this could work.
Yeah, it definitely could, man. Holy shit.
I've seen like this thing near my house. It's like more of a CrossFit thing then. The guy's got like a trailer and he like sets it up there, and I think people come and do workouts with him in the park. I don't know who the dude is. It'd be so interesting to
smart,
find.
Man. That's a cool way to keep your overheads low. It's like, why have a gym when you can just like have a trailer with a bunch of weights that you've been accumulating over the last couple of years?
I'm gonna pull up bar and keep it.
Yeah, that's it. But you could totally 100% make that work. Yeah.
That's my pitch to you.
Fuck, man.
We'll talk about percentages later.
Okay. Get some residuals. I remember seeing was it when Doyle was touring with Danzig the first time at like the Blacks of the Black tour. This is like, I don't know, like 10 years ago or something like that. I remember walking behind the trailer and seeing like the full fucking Doyle bench, in there with all his weights, going like, holy fuck, this guy is serious.
That's commitment. And the trailer, you got to get an extra big trailer to haul all this shit.
Yeah,
that's
it's like,
amazing.
Hey Glenn, by the way, I'm bringing my full kit.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And I'm sure Glenn's like, I don't care, like fucking do whatever the hell you want. Actually, if anything, it's just like, yeah, man, I need you to like Doyle. I need you to look as good as that all the fucking time.
He sort of has to at this point, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't put a shirt on at this point,
dude. But that's just it. How fucked up would that be? I don't know. I think he could get away with starting to wear a t-shirt, but there's only so doughy you can get, But that's it. It's like at that point, it's like you've painted yourself into a corner. Like you are like the fittest guy in, dare I say, music. Like I'm trying to think.
Many others.
I'm trying to think of like, okay, who's another musician that's like has as chiseled a physique, and he's 60.
Exactly.
Like, Jesus, like if you were to like, just say, let's like grab photos of him over the last like 30 years of like how great shape he's been in, and the fact that he's still as old as he is and as great a shape as he is, like, yeah, okay, like he doesn't have quite as much muscle mass anymore, but like, fuck, who cares, man? The guy's still jacked as shit.
And look at all the other 60-year-olds out there.
Yeah, exactly. Fucked up, man.
You mentioned before the English metal scene. Do you feel like growing up and playing in Montreal that there was a division between the French and the English metal scene?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had our community, which was great, and then.
Because you
sorry. Because like
Endas would be a part of the English metal community in my mind, and then Blackguard was more.
Oh yeah, Blackguard was in the French community. That's it. Because so like when Blackguard was called Perfugus Mortis prior to being called Blackguard, I mean, I joined into that band by accident. Well, not by accident. So, the funny story about how I joined Blackguard was. I was there was like a band that I was in between Endast and Perfugus Mortis at Blackguard, and we were rehearsing like 2 doors down from them at Cité de Mille, and we were on break, and I walked by their room, and I had just seen them live the week before opening for Blinded by Faith and Unexpect at Foofs. So I knew that they jammed there, and I heard them jamming, and I just knocked on the door, and I was just like, and one of the guys opened up, and I was just like, hey, like, just wanted to say, like, I saw you guys play last week, and it was fucking fantastic. And the guy, I think it was Terry, and he was just like, oh, thanks. Do you know a singer? I'm just like, I'm a singer. We're like, why? He's just like, well, that was our last show with our singer, and we're looking for a new one. I'm like, fuck it, man, I'll come in. So I literally just walked in, They played a song, and I gibberished my way, scream gibberished my way through a song of theirs. And what they told me, like after the fact, like apparently when I left, they were like, "Oh my God, that was fucking perfect." So like that's how I got that gig.
That's so funny.
But sort of going back to like the theme of this topic in terms of the division between the English and the French scenes is that like I wasn't friends with any of them. I wasn't friends with any of their friends because they were very much part of the French the French scene beforehand. Exactly. Like so. Listen, like if you're an English guy, you just naturally hang out with more English people, like your English school or whatnot. And like, so like, just geographically, we live in different parts of the city. So yeah, we might see each other at show, might be in the same building at some shows, but it doesn't mean we're not running in the same social circles. So I would have no reason to necessarily run into these cats except for this chance meeting, of walking in, like walking into their jam and, wishing them, saying that they had a good show. So like that's how I infiltrated the French scene was just being a nice guy and wishing them trying to wish them a happy career. And then it landed me a job. It took me around the world.
Silly to me that there's this like segregation between the two scenes when there's
not so much anymore. I find, anyways, but definitely before. But I also, you could think of it. Maybe it was like you could consider it. Maybe it was like somewhat self-imposed in the sense that, like, we had our community, like, so we were like a bunch of English bands that kind of got together and sort of popped up, but we were all like, okay, so it was just buds and buds of buds who made bands that were having problems finding shows. So we just kind of made this faux community, this makeshift community of like 8 bands maybe.
Yeah, and we started booking our own shows. So there was nothing, and like, yeah, there was like the promoters that were handling more of the French bands, and like I don't think we ever really reached out to them to try to get us on their gigs necessarily. We just made our own gig. Maybe Sapphire was more around by the French scene. I feel like when we played,
Sapphire was definitely there was a lot of, because there was
Ostrogoth?
Yeah, okay, there was Ostrogoth. So DJ Ostrogoth was putting on shows. So he booked mostly French bands, but that was because like those were the bands he knew. He would have, like, there's no reason why we would be on his radar necessarily.
Because he didn't even know we existed.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and gradually over time, okay, you start to see like posters and the stickers around, and we all wound up at the same bars at one point or another.
We ended up playing with the Minds and
yeah, exactly.
What became Mythosis, and
which became Crypto. Donaldson. The Donaldson effect.
We weaseled our way into Cryptops.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So that's it. Over time, everybody kind of like weaseled their way into other different bands, and
maybe it just comes with like maturity.
That too. Because like we were young, and like you have your social circles, and then gradually those, hopefully those expand over time. Like the more you're going to, like, yeah, when you get in your 20s and you keep going to the same shows, you wind up making new friends and whatnot.
And some of the lifer bandmates, people that have moved on to newer projects in an older age, there's fewer and fewer people from your old circle that you would like to play with because you've like musically outgrown them, so you end up teaming up with people from the other scene. Maybe that's where it comes from.
I remember that when I when I first got into Perfugus Mortis, and then I started like hanging out with them, I was definitely the English guy, and my French wasn't nearly as good as it would later become, and a lot of their English wasn't that great either. But we met somewhere in the middle, which is how everybody grows. But I started meeting a shit ton more people just through that band, because that was I was connected. We were rehearsing with our jam room was with Unexpect, so now I became friends with them, and they would later go on and tour North America, and they became a big deal. And like meeting Eric Galley of Galley Records, which was a big deal, which is a really big deal in Canada for a long time. Like they put out, like Galley put out like the first Despised Icon, and I think some Ion Dissonance stuff too. Like a lot of
Beneath the Massacre,
and probably Unexpect too, and Blinded by Fate. Like, you know, a lot of like the significant Canadian underground bands was all like, I mean, Galley was the gatekeeper for a lot of that.
Shout out to Galley, he still books Canada.
Yep, shout out to fucking Eric Galley, man. That guy grinded, and fuck, man. I was doing an interview last week with Metal Injection talking about the Montreal scene, and I hope I mentioned Galley, because Galley was definitely an extremely significant played a significant role in the Montreal scene.
It's like a father founder.
Yeah.
Getting all these bands out into the world. Oh,
I mean, and like he, you know, like he was taking out ads in Brave Words Bloody Knuckles magazine when that was in, you know, that was a nationwide distributed, nationwide, fucking worldwide, you know, that was distributed everywhere, and Galley had fucking ads in there. So like, man, you were getting viewed all over the fucking place back when people gave a shit about magazines, you know, like. So
it's almost just like us, you know, just staying in that English community was almost like constraining us, our growth almost.
Yeah, that's it. It was somewhat self-imposed, because like we definitely got into like a groove of playing with our little group of bands, but also like we didn't fit with a lot of the other bands either. Like stylistically, we didn't fit with a lot of them.
Do you think they were more extreme?
Yes, absolutely. We weren't death metal.
No.
None of us were death metal bands. And like, like the early 2000s was, and forever is like, dude, like this is a death metal fucking city, you know, like that was like the heyday of Neuraxis and Quo Vadis and Cryptopsy and everybody, and Cataclysm, the whole nine. But like that was like the beginning of the explosion of like the deathcore and the technical death scene in Montreal. So like we didn't fit with any of those motherfuckers. Like, you know, like there wasn't no reason we would have played those shows anyways.
I don't know why did you think that happened? Why were we so out of place?
It was just a social circle.
We were just like more influenced from America, because you know I know for myself
to a certain degree, yeah.
For 3 Mile,
3 Mile definitely
heavily influenced by like, you know, Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall, stuff like that.
Yeah, we were on the lighter side. And like but like it was very, you know, I almost want to say it's very French Canadian to be into like the most brutal death metal scene. like it's like the normal stepping stone for music for most people is like, oh well, like first you might listen to some Metallica and then you start gradually getting heavier. And I feel like for an entire generation of kids growing up in Montreal, like the older brothers were immediately force feeding Gorguts and Cryptopsy and Cataclysm, you know, and Cannibal Corpse and Suffocation, you know, like I feel like kids were picking up guitar players and trying to learn Suffo right away, you know, there was no Stairway or learning Smells Like Teen Spirit first. It was Funeral Inception or like or Despise the Sun or whatever. Just like it was right off the bat, or Pierced from Within. It was just like right off the bat. It was, you're learning the most brutal shit. That's how we managed to like breed some of the most insane fucking musicians. Is that like, yeah, man, when you were kids, like you were exposed to, like, you know, for most of Montreal and Quebec, I feel like they were exposed to just the most extreme shit right from the get-go. There was no stepping stone. It was, nope, here's the most technical, ridiculous shit you can possibly play. Start learning.
It sounds like a big part of it too is from like Steph Melil.
Oh yeah, big time.
Who BCI used to book at the Medley, brought in all these amazing, you know, like death metal tours. So maybe a lot of the French scene was like growing up there as well, you know?
Well, that too. Like, funny you mentioned that, because that's where I feel like that's where I also, well, me and everybody else, it's like that. Those were focal points. Those are obviously focal points of the scene. This is where you got to know the other local musicians. Was like checking out the local bands whenever they were, you know, whenever Steph was putting on a local, but everybody was going to those shows all the time. Like I remember going to the BCI shows and going like, oh, that's that guy. Dude, I like the first time I ever met Flo was at Medley. I forget what show it was exactly, but like I met Flo at Medley through like Mitch Lafon or something. Actually, oh god, this was fucking hilarious. So I was telling you about like I had a band for like 5 months that was between Endast and between Perfugus Mortis, and it was called Take Their Lives. We did like 3 shows. It was like proto death, black and deathcore kind of thing. And we did a show and Simon from the Agonist booked it, I think, at Ablaze. Like this is like his band before the Agonist that he was playing guitar in. I forget what they were fucking called, but like, so we did a show, and this was like maybe a week after that, this show at Medley, and I was like, I got into the Medley before like the rest of the crowd, and I was talking with somebody, and then Flo was there, and I was just like, oh, it's like, and I got somebody, I think it was like Mitch Lafon from Brave Words. Do you know Mitch?
No.
Okay. No. He's writer for Brave Words, Play Knuckles back in the day, and now he does does his own podcast, which is getting like really stinking popular. But I think Mitch introduced me, or somebody introduced me, and it's like, this is like Flo from Crypto. I'm like, oh, cool, Flo. Like really nice to meet you. And then like just like people started to come in, and I remember there was like within like a minute, like there was like a kid that came up and was like, oh, it's like, hey, you're Paul from Take Their Lives, and like introduced me and like didn't talk to Flo at all, and I was just kind of like, I just had a little internal laugh. Like that was like, you know, being a little shit kid in the scene with no significant band. It's kind of funny, like, you know, the situation was kind of funny.
Take that, Mounier.
Yeah.
And your 3 albums, 4 albums.
So yeah, so that was funny.
Well, thanks for meeting with me here at your house.
Fucking come by anytime.
It was a pleasure to have you on Vox and Hops. I'm out of questions.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Next time let's freestyle it. No questions.
Just shoot the shit.
Just shit shooting.
All the best, Paul.
Yeah, dude. Thanks a lot for having me on this, man. This is great.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for listening to episode number 5 of Vox and Hops. Such a great conversation with Paul. I love sitting down with him. I sincerely believe that he should have his own podcast. He always has just so much to say. He's so passionate about everything that he does. He is just the coolest person to hang with. So much fun, so many little surprising things. The whole discovering, you know, metal in a Christian youth group. Who the fuck would think that's a possibility? I'm stoked, and I hope that you all check out his new band Ages, which will be coming out soon. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, and I will most likely share it on the Vox and Hops page. As always, if any of you have any questions, comments, recommendations of who I should interview, what beers we should be tasting, and I should be sharing with my guests, give me a shot at matt@voxandhops.com, and I will be more than glad to read anything that you send me. Next on Vox and Hops episode 6, I sit down with the ex-Cryptopsy member, Yuri Remo. Yuri is one of the most intense people that I know. He is the most authentic and genuine people that I know, and I have an excellent conversation about him. He just recently got out of prison, so we touched that, and we talked about his time in Cryptopsy, what happened during that time, the influences that he brought to me as a vocalist. So check all that out on the next episode of Vox and Hops.